The foundation of my life, which I thought was the safest and most solid, collapsed in an instant. The dark truths behind my 5-year marriage to Simone came to light that night. The scene I witnessed at that party was enough to turn my entire past and feelings upside down. I couldn't believe what was unfolding before my eyes. My heart was shattered. But why hadn't Simone wanted me by her side that night? What was she hiding in that moment? Was it just fun, or was there a deeper, more shocking truth behind it all? As these questions swirled in my mind, I was about to find out the answers, and it would be the end of everything. That night was a turning point in my life. I knew it as I watched Simone. Thousands of thoughts raced through my head. Simone had been my wife for 5 years. Everything we had built together, all the memories we shared, seemed to vanish in an instant that night. Seeing Simone sitting naked in that man's lap by the hot tub downstairs, that sight pierced through my heart. The satisfaction on Simone's face, the moment she shared with that man, told me everything. Without knowing what to do, I pulled out my phone and recorded the moment. I had to gather evidence of this betrayal happening before my eyes. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, hoping it was just a nightmare. But when I opened them, the scene hadn't changed. Simone was still there with that man. For a moment, I thought maybe I should put on my swimsuit and go down there, I thought. But then I stopped. No, that wasn't my style. I needed to understand everything before confronting her. I had to process this moment and then talk to Simone. Why hadn't she wanted to bring me to this party? Why did she always keep me away from events like this? Just last week, I had seen a message on Simone's phone. It was a message about her company's Christmas party, mentioning that she could bring someone along. When I mentioned it to her, she had said, "Carl, you'd get bored. These people just talk about money all the time." At the time, I believed her words. I thought she didn't want me there because she was thinking of me, not wanting me to be bored. But now, I knew there was a much different reality behind her behavior. Simone had been living a life she never told me about, and I was witnessing it unfold before my eyes. That night, I began to understand how distant Simone had become lately. Her business trips had increased, she was working late, and attending parties more frequently. "It's always work," she said. But that night, I realized the true nature of those work parties. Simone was living a life I knew nothing about, and it hurt me deeply. When I closed my eyes and thought about it, I remembered the last moment I saw her. When we arrived at the party, she immediately introduced me to a friend, Linda. Simone had quickly laughed with Linda, sharing an odd joke between them. Linda had said, "Wow, you're really married?" Simone had a slight smile on her face, as if the situation was a joke for them. Something broke inside me at that moment, but I couldn't even admit it to myself. When Simone left me alone and disappeared into the crowd, I started to get even more suspicious. As I tried to find her at the party, people were having fun around me, paying no attention to me. I felt excluded. A while later, when Simone returned with 3 men, and one of them had his arm around her waist, the sight before my eyes set my nerves on edge. "Simone, where have you been?" I asked. Simone laughed, slightly tipsy, and said, "We were drinking tequila." But it wasn't just tequila in her mouth, and I didn't want to know what it was. Linda chimed in. "Yeah, we were having a great time." The strange taste I sensed when Simone hugged me shattered everything inside me. I stayed in that moment for a while longer. Simone was laughing with the men, acting as if nothing was wrong. At that moment, I made a decision. I would find out the truth about Simone, about what she had been doing behind my back. As Simone and the men headed towards the penthouse, I followed them. By the time they reached the pool, Simone was already in a bikini and had entered the water with the 2 men. That moment broke my heart completely. I retreated to a corner and watched. This was the moment my marriage ended. I had to come up with a plan to confront Simone. When Simone left me alone again, Linda approached me with a smirk and said mockingly, "I thought you two had an open marriage." I didn't know what to say. What kind of question was that? While Simone was betraying me, these people were treating the betrayal as if it were normal. At that moment, I realized that everyone around Simone was accustomed to this, and perhaps they all knew Simone's secrets. The most important lesson I learned through this process was to never trust anyone completely. After the divorce, Simone lived with Linda for a while. They both continued their lives working at a small store. I saw them a few times, but we never confronted each other. We had become two completely different people, total strangers in the shadow of what had happened in the past. As for me, I moved on with my life. A few years later, I met someone named Claire. Like me, Claire had been betrayed and had gone through a difficult divorce. We slowly built a relationship. At first, we just talked, opening up to each other about our wounds. A deep bond formed between us. We had both been through so much, and this allowed us to understand each other better. In the early days, Claire and I would just take walks together and spend quiet moments. We were learning to trust each other. Over time, the bond between us grew stronger. Claire brought calm and peace into my life. During the time we spent together, I realized how much better I felt with her. Although not everything healed at once, I felt stronger by her side. One evening, when Claire asked me, "Do you find me attractive?" I answered with all honesty, "I find you very attractive in every sense." We were moving slowly and carefully. The wounds from the past were still deep, but together, we were determined to heal them. After everything Simone had put me through, the peace and serenity Claire brought into my life taught me to trust and love again. I was finally leaving the scars of the past behind. What I had lived through with Simone had been a significant lesson for me. But now with Claire, I could look to the future with hope.